Billionaire sees his maid humiliated in a blind date. With only $5, what he did next in hard to believe. Amara smoothed the hem of her royal blue dress, her fingers tracing the fabric nervously. It was the only dress she owned that made her feel remotely elegant, though it clung tightly at her knees and left her posture stiff. She sat at a small corner table, the faint glow of the restaurant lights falling across her restless hands. In front of her sat 2 wine glasses, polished and waiting, one for her, one for the man who had promised to meet her. Every time her eyes drifted to those glasses, a knot twisted tighter in her stomach. They felt like props in a play she didn't belong in, like she was pretending to live a life far above her reach. She tapped the black screen of her phone, hoping to see a message flash. Nothing. Evan had promised he'd be on time, promised he would take care of everything. Yet here she was, $5 in her purse and a heart weighed down with unease. The server approached with a professional smile. "Miss, may I take a card to hold the table? Just policy. We've had some walkouts recently." Amara's throat tightened. She forced her voice steady. "My guest will be here soon. He said he's covering everything." The server hesitated, his eyes flicking toward her empty table before forcing a nod. "Of course. I'll check back shortly." Her cheeks burned. She had no card with balance, nothing to offer except the wrinkled $5 bill meant for bus fare. Just that morning, she had returned an envelope of cash, $3,000 she'd discovered while ironing one of her employer's jackets. She could have kept it. No one would have known. Instead, she placed it quietly on his desk. Hours later, her overtime was cut without explanation. By the time she sent money to her mother and paid her younger brother's school fees, only $5 remained. She clenched her phone tighter. "Please, Evan, don't make this worse." At a nearby table, a man in a royal blue suit closed his menu. Marcus Leon had arrived to meet a business client, but his attention drifted as soon as he noticed her. Amara, his maid. Sitting alone in a dress nearly matching his own suit, shrinking further into herself with every passing second. His jaw tightened, though he said nothing yet. Then the restaurant door opened. Evan strolled in, his grey jacket unbuttoned, hair slicked with too much product, wearing the kind of grin that carried arrogance rather than charm. He slid into the chair across from Amara, as though he owned the place. "Hope you weren't waiting long," he said casually. She forced a smile, though her voice trembled. "Just a few minutes." Evan chuckled as he flipped open the menu. "Wow, prices here are insane. You picked this place?" Amara's eyes widened. "You suggested it." Right, he muttered, already waving to the server. "Sparkling water for me. Let's just browse first." The server returned, polite but firm. "Sir, we'll still need a card before service begins." Evan leaned back, smirking. "Ladies first." Amara froze. Her hands shook as she reached into her purse, pulling out the crumpled bill. Her face flushed with heat. "This is all I have." Evan's laugh rang too loud. $5? That's what you brought? At a place like this?" The diners nearby shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others staring. Amara blinked rapidly, fighting the sting in her eyes. Amara's throat tightened as Evan leaned back in his chair, still laughing at her expense. "You really should have warned me," he said louder this time, his words cutting sharper with each syllable. "Dragging me to a place like this when you've got... what? A maid's salary?" His eyes narrowed with cruel amusement. "What were you even thinking?" The words sliced through her, sharper than the stares of strangers. She tried to hide her trembling hands under the table, but Evan wasn't finished. "What's next?" he mocked. "You going to tell me you scrub floors or something?" He let out another laugh, crueler this time. "Oh, wait. Maybe you do. A maid, right? That explains everything." The word maid landed like a slap across her face. Nearby, a couple exchanged glances, shifting uncomfortably. Another diner pretended to look at his menu, though his eyes flicked back toward her again and again. Amara whispered, "Please stop." Her voice cracked, breaking under the weight of humiliation. Before Evan could respond, the floor manager appeared, his tone clipped. "Excuse me, sir, ma'am. Without a valid card, we'll need to release the table." Policy. Amara's lips parted, her voice almost too soft to hear. Then I'll go. I don't want to cause trouble. Her body shook as she rose from her seat, clutching her small purse tightly against her chest. Heat burned across her skin, shame crawling up her neck like fire. The stairs around her felt unbearable. But then, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every head turned. Marcus Leon stood. His royal blue suit caught the restaurant's golden light, his presence commanding silence before he spoke a single word. His expression was calm, but his eyes were firm, steady, unyielding. "That won't be necessary," Marcus said. Amara froze, horrified recognition sweeping through her. Her employer, the last man she ever wanted to witness her humiliation. Her knees weakened as her voice cracked. Sir... Marcus's gaze locked onto hers, anchoring her in place. "Sit down, Amara." The room fell into a hush, every diner holding their breath. Even the faint clinking of glasses stilled. Evan leaned back, a smirk crawling across his face. "Oh, so you know her," he drawled. "That explains a lot. Figures she works for you." His grin widened. "You're really going to save your maid in front of everyone?" Amara winced, the word echoing again like poison in the air. Marcus walked forward, his steps unhurried but heavy with authority. "She's not just a maid," he said firmly. "Her name is Amara, and tonight she is my guest." The floor manager hesitated, shifting nervously. "Sir, our policy requires—" Marcus withdrew his black card without breaking eye contact. "Place whatever hold you need on this." His voice sharpened, "and then apologize to her." The manager swallowed, turning to Amara with a stiff bow. "Miss, I apologize. I should not have spoken the way I did." Amara lowered her eyes, her voice trembling. "It's fine." Marcus's tone cut through the air. "No, it's not fine. You don't apologize for being humiliated. They apologize for humiliating you." A murmur rippled through the diners, whispers spreading like wildfire. The restaurant felt like it had stopped breathing. All eyes were on the table where Amara stood frozen, her purse clutched tightly to her chest. Evan leaned back in his chair, still wearing that smug grin, though it faltered just slightly under Marcus's steady gaze. "Wow," he scoffed. "You're really making a scene over this? She's broke, man. Look at her. She walked in here with $5. $5. And you're going to pretend she belongs here?" Marcus's jaw tightened, his voice cutting like steel. "You want to talk about money? Let's talk about integrity." Evan's smirk wavered. Marcus leaned forward, his words sharp and deliberate. "This afternoon, she found $3,000 in my jacket. Cash. No receipt, no record, no witnesses. She could have pocketed it. No one would have ever known. Do you know what she did?" The restaurant went silent, diners leaning in, waiting. "She returned it," Marcus said firmly. Quietly, without a word. "That's who she is. That honesty is worth more than every insult you've thrown at her tonight. And you," his eyes narrowed, "you tried to reduce her to $5. Amara's lips trembled. She pressed a hand over her mouth, tears slipping free despite her efforts to hold them back. Evan blinked, his smirk collapsing. "That's... come on. She's playing you." Marcus's voice dropped, colder now. "Delete the recording." A ripple moved through the diners as heads turned toward Evan's phone on the table, its small red light glowing. Evan stammered. "Delete it," Marcus repeated, his tone sharp as a blade. Security had already stepped closer, their presence heavy. Under their stare, Evan cursed under his breath and fumbled with his phone. His fingers trembled as he tapped the screen until the red light disappeared. Shoving the device into his pocket, he stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the polished floor. "Enjoy your charity project," he spat, his face flushed with humiliation of his own. "She's all yours." He stormed out, the restaurant door slamming behind him. The sound echoed, then faded, replaced by a collective exhale from the diners. The heavy tension lifted, replaced by something different: curiosity, respect, awe. Marcus turned back to Amara, His voice softened, though it carried the same weight. "Sit." Her body shook, her breath uneven. "Everyone's staring," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Let them," Marcus said firmly. "They're not staring at shame anymore. They're staring at what respect looks like." Slowly, her trembling legs carried her back into her chair. She lowered herself cautiously, like someone still afraid the ground beneath her might give way. The waiter approached, hesitant now, as though he too felt the gravity of the moment. "Shall I take your order, sir?" Marcus didn't glance at the menu. "Bring her something simple, something real, not for show, something she'll enjoy." When the plate arrived, roast chicken with vegetables, plain but warm, Amara's hands shook as she lifted her fork. Her voice came out a whisper. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," Marcus replied without hesitation. His gaze never left hers. "Because you gave me honesty when no one was looking. Tonight I gave you dignity when everyone was." Her tears fell again, but this time they carried the fragile curve of a smile. The restaurant slowly returned to its rhythm, glasses clinking, low voices rising again, but the atmosphere around their table remained different. Diners stole glances at Amara, not with ridicule anymore, but with something closer to quiet admiration. Amara dabbed at her cheeks, trying to compose herself, though her hands still trembled. She forced a bite of food, the flavors warm and comforting, but her stomach was twisted too tightly to truly taste it. Marcus leaned back, his expression calmer now. "Eat," he said simply, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You need strength, not shame." Her lips parted, a protest forming, but she stopped when she met his eyes. They weren't cold, like she often saw at work when he dealt with staff or business matters. Tonight they were steady, protective, and strangely kind. "You surprised me," she whispered. "Good," Marcus said quietly, cutting into his own meal. "The world expects you to suffer in silence. It's about time someone shattered that expectation." For a moment, Amara could only stare at him, uncertain whether to feel gratitude or fear. After all, Marcus Leon was her employer, not her friend. A man of power, wealth, and influence, someone who didn't belong in the same world as her. And yet, here he was, defending her dignity when no one else would. By the time the plates were cleared, Amara's shoulders had loosened just slightly. She still felt raw, exposed, but the crushing weight of humiliation had lifted, if only for now. When they stepped outside the restaurant, the cool night air swept over her skin, grounding her. Amara clutched her purse, staring down at the sidewalk. "You didn't have to see all of that," she said, her voice low. Marcus turned to her, his expression unreadable. "And yet I did." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unsure of what to say. Gratitude tangled with shame, and the words refused to come out. Marcus adjusted his jacket, his gaze still fixed on her. "Go home, Amara. Rest. Tomorrow will be different." Confusion flickered across her face, but his tone left no room for questions. She nodded softly and walked toward the bus stop, her steps small, unsteady, her mind a storm of emotions she couldn't untangle. The next morning, Marcus stood in his office, the glass windows framing the city skyline behind him. He held a file in one hand, but his attention was fixed on the young woman standing uncertainly near the door. Amara had returned to her uniform, white blouse, black skirt, hair neatly pulled back. She looked smaller here than she had last night, like she was trying to fold herself into the background. The HR director, Lucia, stood nearby, shifting nervously under Marcus's sharp gaze. "Her overtime was cut without cause," Marcus said firmly, setting the file on his desk. "Restore it, with back pay." Lucia blinked. "Sir, that's unusual." "And enroll her in evening classes," Marcus interrupted. "Hospitality management, bookkeeping, whatever she chooses, full tuition, effective immediately." The director hesitated. "That's highly irregular." "So was what she did yesterday," Marcus cut in, his eyes narrowing. "Handle it." Lucia swallowed, then nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Amara's breath caught in her throat. She stared at Marcus, unable to mask her shock. "Why would you—" Amara's voice trailed off, fragile with disbelief. She clasped her hands together, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her uniform. "Why would you do that for me?" Marcus's expression softened, though his tone remained steady. "Because no one who shows that kind of honesty should ever have to be humiliated for $5. Her lips parted, but the words stuck in her throat. Gratitude, fear, doubt, all tangled together. She finally managed, "I'll pay it back. Every cent. Somehow." Marcus shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "This isn't debt, Amara. It's justice. And it's yours." The weight of his words pressed into her, leaving her speechless. She lowered her eyes, blinking away tears she hadn't wanted him to see. "Don't thank me," Marcus continued gently. "Just remember this, and one day, when it's your turn, pay it forward." Amara nodded, though her chest ached with the force of unspoken emotions. She stepped back, bowing her head slightly before retreating from the office. That night, as she lay on her narrow bed in the small apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother, Amara replayed the events in her mind. The restaurant, Evan's sneer, the cruel laughter, the shame burning her skin. Then Marcus's voice, calm but unshakable, turning the tide of the entire room with a single sentence. "She's not just a maid. She is my guest." She pressed her pillow to her face, stifling the sob that broke free. For the first time in years, the tears weren't only from pain, but also from relief. Her brother, barely 12, stirred in the next room. She wiped her face quickly and forced her breathing steady. She had to be strong, for him, for her mother, for herself. The following week, life inside Marcus Leon's mansion shifted subtly. Staff whispered about the unusual favor shown to Amara, their eyes following her whenever she walked by. Some looked at her with envy, others with curiosity, and a few with quiet respect, but Amara kept her head down. She ironed, she polished, she scrubbed floors, just as she always had. Except now there was something new stirring inside her, a fragile seed of hope. Evening classes were arranged, tuition covered in full. For the first time, she dared to imagine a life beyond servitude. Yet with that hope came fear. Fear of owing too much. Fear of being noticed in ways she wasn't prepared for. Fear of what people might say. One evening, as she finished her shift, she saw Marcus standing by the grand staircase, his phone in one hand, his other tucked into his pocket. His gaze lifted when he noticed her. "How are the classes?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Amara hesitated. "Challenging. But good," she admitted softly. "I never thought I'd—" She stopped herself, cheeks flushing. Marcus studied her for a long moment. "Don't waste time doubting what you're capable of. Doubt is just another cage." She froze, his words echoing in her chest. A cage. That was exactly how her life had always felt. Amara carried Marcus's words with her for days. Doubt is just another cage. Each time exhaustion whispered that she wasn't smart enough for her evening classes, she repeated them. Each time fear told her she didn't belong among the other students, she forced herself to remember the night in the restaurant, the night Marcus had silenced an entire room for her dignity. She began walking into class with her head a little higher, her notebooks filled with careful notes, her determination growing with each lesson. For once, she allowed herself to believe that her life might not always be measured by what she lacked, but by what she could build. At the mansion, her co-workers continued to whisper, some skeptical, others supportive. She ignored them all. What mattered was that her brother's school fees were paid, her mother slept a little easier, and she finally had the chance to dream. One evening, Marcus found her in the library, a stack of books spread out on the long oak table. She was so deep in study she didn't notice him until he spoke. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked lightly. Amara startled, nearly dropping her pen. I didn't mean to intrude here, sir. I'll leave." Marcus raised a hand. "Stay. You belong here more than half the people I've entertained in this room." Her cheeks warmed. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. "I just want to do well. to prove I'm not wasting what you gave me." Marcus leaned against the doorway, his voice calm. "You don't owe me proof. You owe yourself belief." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. Instead, it felt grounding, like she was being seen, not as a maid, not as a burden, but as a person. Weeks passed, and Amara's confidence grew. Small moments added up, presenting her first assignment without stuttering, solving a problem before anyone else in class, answering a question the professor said most students struggled with. Each victory chipped away at the old cage of doubt. Her employer remained a steady, if distant, presence. He didn't hover, didn't smother her with praise, but every so often he would ask a simple question: "How's the work?" Or, "What did you learn today?" And those words meant more than grand gestures ever could. Months later, Amara sat across from Marcus in his office once again. She wasn't in her maid's uniform this time. She wore a neat blouse, her posture straighter, her voice steadier. Lucia, the HR director, handed Marcus a folder. "Her course results, sir. She excelled." Marcus opened the file briefly, then closed it with a satisfied nod. He looked at Amara. "So, what's next?" Amara swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "I want to keep going. Management, accounting. Maybe one day I could oversee operations, not just clean them." A slow smile touched Marcus's lips, rare but genuine. "Then that's exactly what you'll do." Tears stung her eyes, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from possibility. That night, Amara walked home lighter than ever before. She didn't clutch her purse out of fear, didn't bow her head to avoid stares. Instead, she carried herself with quiet pride. She remembered Marcus's words. "You gave me honesty when no one was looking. Tonight I gave you dignity when everyone was." Now she carried both. And for the first time, she truly believed her future was her own to shape. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.